was trying to aggravate you and it didn't work.
Oh, what were you doing?
I had I happened to see that the light was hitting my cell phone and shining up.
Oh. I didn't see it.
Watch this cord.
Oh yeah, I gotcha. It's like shooting right past it.
Aperture may miss it, but
Yeah, if I need to put an extra XLR on it, is it sticking out too far?
No, you're good.
Okay.
You're good.
All right. Let's get started here. Let's get this knocked out. Oops.
get me knocked out.
That's right. Get you knocked out, because I know there's better things that you need to be doing. Like playing with that little baby.
Son, we have been slammed with doctor's appointments.
Oh, wow. So, first of all, tell me what you're doing in Bolivia.
I'm a missionary. Our goal is to start churches and try and I'm a pilot, so my thought is to start a church in probably a slightly larger city that has an airport, the capability of being able to fly in and out, get fuel and things like that, but also be able to go out and do some of the other villages that are a lot farther out. Most of them don't have, or a lot of them don't have roads, obviously no airport or anything like that, but the area that we're wanting to work in is called the Altiplano, which means high plain. It being a plane allows us to land an airplane, just about anywhere in some kind of field or something like that, so we can fly out to some of these villages that it takes days to be able to reach by vehicle. And it allows us to be able to get to those villages, maybe within an hour, 2 hours or something like that, to be able to reach. And so my goal is to be able to start maybe a hub in the larger village or whatever, and then train people and try and get people under a burden in those places to be able to help me go out to some of these other places. The other places are a bit more dangerous, and they don't like outsiders. Bolivia is considered it's considered the #1 country out of all countries that hates or dislikes foreigners, and so they're not going to accept me. But if I can get one of their people to help me go into their areas, it will maybe allow me to get into those villages a little easier.
I'm going to adjust that back just for a second. Hold that thought. Adjust it a little bit. Now, do you have
So get started.
Are you in a church already, or are you working with the Fannings?
Technically, right now, we're just in language school. We have worked with the Fannings. When the Fannings were on their furlough the last time, we went and filled in for them for about 6 months and took their churches. But right now, we're mainly just in language school, trying to get things going. It's my understanding that it's good if you can talk to the people if you're going to try and witness to them.
You have the lens flare back too. No.
Just trying to think of what you could put on that side.
I lost the lens into it. I take it like.
Yeah, but we could maybe try and put something on the edge to
like a
block it.
barn door or something. Or something makeshift something.
So basically, you're in language school right now.
Right.
Okay. So you haven't actually started your ministry, is that right?
Not as far as starting churches.
Okay.
The Lord has allowed us to start somewhat of a printing ministry. When I was here in the States, I worked for Anchor Baptist Church, and mainly for the radio station, but also somewhat on the side for publishing. And we printed Bibles and and with special covers on them and stuff like that. And so we've taken the same idea down there, and they're in La Paz, in the capital city, where I'm doing language school and stuff. There are some mission works that's been started in that area, and so we're trying to help them, anything from Bible college material to Sunday school material to just whatever the things are that they need. Just within the last 3 to 4 months, we printed almost 30,000 pages, just of different types of material, of different things, trying to get them the material that they need to be able to get started. Because down there you can't buy regular church material and stuff like that. We've done anything from Sunday school to material to the hymnals, and so just trying to do some of that. But for right now, that's the main part of our ministry, just until we can get through language school and get some things started.
All right, so you're printing out a lot of stuff, and you're going out into the neighborhood and handing it. Was it like the John and Romans, and you're handing that stuff out?
Yeah,
Describe that to me.
Well, for instance, my first project when I get back is there's a little church that has had a member that caused some issues in the church, and it's caused some problems in the church, and so I'm going to try and go help that church build that church back up once we get in there. And so my project when I get back is to do a John and Romans or a Romans. It depends on what the pastor wants, with a special cover on the front that's inviting people to church and that type of stuff, and an invitation on the inside from the pastor, and hopefully be able to start going door to door in the local community to try and invite some people and try and help build that, in the long run, build that church back up as we can.
Turn your body slightly towards me a little bit. There you go. Yep, that's good. That's perfect. That's perfect. There we go. So you're working with churches that are already there, correct?
Currently, yeah. Well, at least while we're in language school,
Okay.
I'm not able to do too much with our own, because mainly a lot of it's because where we're wanting to go is not in the capital city, and so while we're in language school, we're at least trying to do a little bit of something until we're able to get out there and get started on our own.
And you're printing up stuff, and so do you have a copier, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's pretty much like an office, a large office printer, copier type thing. The publishing ministry out of Anchor helped us purchase it, and so that's what we're doing. I do a lot of my own design, but there's a lot of things that they already have. They just need more copies of, and stuff like that. And so whatever the need ends up being at the time.
Well, tell me about the need. I mean, what kind of need is there? I mean, are you like overrun with people going, "Hey, can you print this for me? Can you print that for me?"
Somewhat. I am somewhat, because they're in the capital city. Like we've got about 2.5 million people, and we've only got about 4 or 5 churches, and so those churches are trying to get out more and more. I printed a set of Bibles for one of the churches. I think we printed about 400 or 500 Bibles. They were gone in about 10 minutes, because there was just so much, so many people that you can try and get it out to. And when you give out so many pieces of material, you're doing it realizing that some of us, they're not necessarily going to attend, but you also have the realization that some of them may. It does open the door in some of the places, and so. But we've also been able to try and, like, where some of the people down there have had a book or something like that, to be able to share that with some of their people or whatever, if it's anything from study material and stuff like that they've had. So I know it's a little awkward since we're still in language school and we don't really have the church, but I mean, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, but you've got 4 or 5 churches that are coming to you on a regular basis needing these materials.
I am behind. I've probably got about 4 or 5 projects fairly large projects waiting on me when I get back.
Wow. And these are these other Baptist churches, or are they affiliated with Anchor? Or?
They're not affiliated with, well, 1 or 2 of them are, because of Brother Fanning. That's, they've been missionaries down there for several years. But the others have been started by other missionaries. Okay. The problem is with the altitude and everything, almost all of the other missionaries are gone. They just can't handle it due to the health and things like that. they call it a missionary graveyard, just because people can't handle it at that altitude.
Really? Yeah. Describe that a little bit to me. I mean, what is the state of missionaries in La Paz right now?
Well, as far as La Paz, there are two missionaries. Like I said, there's over 2 million people there in that area. But I know of several other families that have been in and out. But like I said, the altitude you're at. I mean, we live at over 12,000 feet, and so the oxygen and everything, it just wreaks havoc on a body, and most, if not all of them, have left because of health problems.
But you're okay with that.
Well, I mean, you got to do what you got to do,
Yeah.
and so far we've been okay, and it's one of those things that should the situation come, there are lower elevations there in Bolivia, and should the situation come, I do have other places there that I can go if I have to.
But I mean, it seems like that leaves a great need.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Tell me about the need.
Well, the Altiplano, which is where our goal has been to try and reach. There are thousands of villages. I believe somebody told me that the Altiplano is about 500 miles long and about 80 or 90 miles wide, and there are no churches. There's one village that has, I think, 2 churches, and that's pretty much all that there is. There's a lot of the the cults and the neo-evangelicals and all this other stuff, but as far as a good Bible-based, straight in their doctrine, I don't know of any. There was a missionary in the village that we've been looking at is a village called Oruro, and there has been missionaries there in the past, but I believe it was in '59. The missionaries that were there were out in a village, and the priest got the people up against them and had them killed. And as far as I know, nobody has ever gone back. And so you have all these villages that have absolutely nothing across through there. It's just one of those things that I don't know if it's because nobody knows about it or because people's afraid to try and go back because of what happened to the last missionary. But either way, there's still the need. There's still the people that need the gospel.
And so, how do you think they react to the white man coming in and trying to give, say, like white man's religion or whatever? Because they're sort of Native American, kind of, even though it's South America,
they are an indigenous type people as well. But they are, most of them are what the indigenous, the top, I guess, people, whatever you want to call it. They are Aymara, and in their language that actually means bitter, and that's the way a lot of them are. They're very close when it comes to their family, when it comes to their people, their village, and they don't like outsiders. They just don't care for any of the outsiders, and so it is going to be hard to try and reach a lot of them just because they don't want. Bolivia can't stand America as it is, and so having an American come and try and persuade them in a different way of what they've always believed, it's going to be a hard thing. They don't accept it. One thing that we do have to our advantage, and I know it sounds weird, but because Catholicism has such a strong hold in that area, they are very respectful to religion in general, things of the Lord, things of God, and so that's one of the things that I try and use to our advantage. I'll go and there's not much that we can agree with the Catholics, but there are some things that they teach that are, they teach the Trinity, they talk about Christ, they talk about God, and so we take some of those things that they do teach that we believe, and use that to open up a door and start talking to them. Not necessarily, going up to them and say, well, what you believe is wrong, but taking the things that they believe and using that to open up the door, and through that, over time, start asking questions. Well, what about this? Where the Bible says this, and getting them to question, and try to start thinking about it themselves, because all they've ever been told is what the priest says. The Catholic Church in a lot of places, I don't know if it's everywhere, but they teach them not to read their Bible, And that's where everything comes. That's what we believe. Where everything that we believe comes from. So that's one of the things that I try and do. Well, they believe very strongly in the Bible, and they believe that it's right. So I try and take that, and I try and use it to say, well, what about where the Lord said this? What about this? And help them understand what we believe and the things of the gospel.
Definitely. Well, you kind of, what I'm seeing here is a little bit of, you're saying your print projects are out of control. You can't keep up with printing out Bibles, but yet the folks don't want you there and sort of. So what's going on here? Where's that?
Well, the thing with it is, like I said, they have a very they have a great respect for things of the gospel and things of religion, or whatever you want to call it. And so, for instance, in the States, when you hand somebody a tract, you hand somebody a John and Romans, you're doing good if they even look at it. A lot of times they just throw it in the trash or something like that. They're in belief because they have such a strong respect for religious type things. You can hand them a tract and just walk a couple steps, turn around, and they're already reading it. And so it gives, even if they won't allow me to talk to them, right away, it does at least get the gospel into their home, get the gospel to them, and then hopefully I can come back at a later date and be able to use that as an open door to come back and say, did you read what we had? What'd you think about it? And be able to answer questions and be able to talk to them and use, just like I said, use that as an open door.
Well, that's just it. I mean, having that printed word, having that, it's. I mean, that is your way in, correct?
Right.
And so, how important is it to your ministry to be able to print these materials off?
Well, there, a lot of places, you have a lot of ministries here in the States that they supply Bibles, they supply tracts and things like that. But the problem, and that is a great ministry, it's a very needed ministry. But the problem with it for us is that we can't get it into the country. It's not that it's illegal to have it, but the country is so against America, so against things being imported from America, that I know of a missionary that had some Bibles shipped to him, and he paid $200 or $300 just for one case of Bibles. And by the time I could print that and have saved that missionary that money, and so it's, there's a lot of things here that I could use, but I can't get it into the country. When it comes to the Sunday school material, it comes to the Bible college material and stuff like that, I can't get it into the country. Like I said, it's not because it's illegal, it's just because they tax you and they try and keep things from America coming in.
So, I mean, you being able to print stuff is very, very important.
Yeah.
I mean, just kind of describe how, since you can't bring anything in, you don't have anything to work with, really.
Right.
So you need to print this stuff out. So, and do they not have like a lot of reading material at all? I mean, do they have like libraries and books and things like that?
Most of the libraries and books that you find, if they're religious, they're Catholic. And so there's a lot of doctrinal errors in there. I mean, they do have some other religions and stuff like that, but most of what you find would be Catholic, or at least have a push towards that type thing. And so one of the blessings that we've had is we have ministries that will say, hey, here's this material, here is this commentary, here is whatever it is. If you can use it where you're at, take it. But the problem is, like I said, we can't get a bulk of material in. So we'll bring it from the States, just 1 or 2 copies, and then we'll use that to be able to copy and supply the material for the churches.
Very cool, very cool. And tell me a little bit about what, obviously you're in the language school and you're doing the printing ministry right now, but what is your future look like? What's going to happen when you get done with your language school?
Our goal is to leave the capital city. Not that there's not a need there, but to leave there. We've got two villages in mind. The one that has stuck out in my mind the most is the village of Oruro that I spoke of. It is where the missionary was killed at. There are over 200,000 people in that city. I I guess the biggest thing that really attracted me to that area, the main Catholic church that I know of in that area. Of course, they teach all the things that Catholics teach. They teach all that stuff, but they also teach the other religion, the other cultural things. And I found this in a lot of places in the world. But for instance, they have a religion they call Pachamama. It is like an earth worship, and there in Oruro, one of the big things that they worship with the earth is a frog. I don't know where the frog come from, but they worship a frog. And as you go into the Catholic Church, what's quite interesting is even there in the Catholic Church, they have paintings of frogs with some of their virgins and their idols and things that they do. But the Altiplano is a very large mining area, and one of the things that was done a long time ago was to try and force the people to work and try and force them to do it when the Spaniards were taking over, was that they put a statue of Satan inside the mines. And what they've been taught is if you don't offer sacrifices to Satan, and if you don't offer the things to Satan, that while you're in the mine, he'll have you killed and eat your soul. And the thing that I find interesting about that is at least there in Oruro, in order to get into the mine and get to the statue of Satan to offer the sacrifices, you have to go through that exact same church, the exact same Catholic church. And so they are offering all this just to try and draw more people in. And so there's one of the things that I've thought about when the Lord allows us to start our church is to call it Truth Baptist Church, Iglesia Bautista Verdad, and that's because there is no truth. You know, there's all these things being taught, but they're not being taught truth, and so I really want to go out there and do that, and hopefully use that as my hub, as a base to be able to start going out to some of the other places. Another area that we have in mind is an area called Cochabamba. It is a very strong place for the Mormons. It is kind of their hub for South America, and they come in and they teach them there. And so obviously there's a strong influence there in that area. And so that's another spot that's kind of been in our minds and trying to go reach. But really, even whether it's Oruro or Cochabamba, we're still waiting on the Lord to show us which place. But either way, we still have the same goal, and that's to go start a church, have a base to be able to get going, and then use that to start going out into the villages outside of there to start other areas.
But you said that this town, there were missionaries killed.
Right.
In this town, and you've got a brand new baby, and you're going to take your wife and baby.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be. You've got to have a lot of faith.
I was one of the things that Jessica said when we started preparing to go. She started getting rid of some stuff and things, and one thing that she looked at me and she said, "Obedience is better than sacrifice." And talking about where Samuel said that to Saul, and you know, it's been said that I'm safer in the will of God there, where they've killed missionaries and they've done all that type of stuff, than I am here in Western North Carolina, out of the will of God. And it's one of those things you just have to realize that He can help you. He can have faith that He can. It's not just a Bible thing. That He did it in Bible times. He did it for these people in the Old Testament, but He's still the same God now that He was during those times. And so He's still just as able to protect us, still just as able to help us and guide us. One of the things that I've thought of as a focus towards that is just discernment. Letting the Lord show you where to go, what to do, and how to do it. Just because it is somewhat of a dangerous area. Just a couple of weeks ago, the miners were protesting, and when the miners protest, they start throwing dynamite. They block off the roads, and to cross those blockades, you'll die. But the Lord, He showed us what to do and how to do it. And there was a point where we crossed their blockade, but we just felt like that was the Lord's will, and that was the time to go. it was a dangerous thing to do, but we felt like that was what we were supposed to do. And the Lord, the Lord helped us get to where we was trying to go. And it just has a lot to do with just trying to follow the Lord and His leadership.
Is there one story, since you've been in Bolivia or whatever, is there one story that really stands out in your mind? Is that, man, I got to this person, or I got to that person, or the word that you printed out or whatever got to that person, and you were, influenced and able to save them, or maybe baptize them or whatever? Is there one instance in your mind that just really...
I guess the instance that sticks in my mind was the first time that I was able to preach in Spanish on my own. I had preached for a long time with an interpreter, but I'd never been able to preach on my own. But at Christmas, I didn't have the help, and so I was forced to try and figure out how to do it on my own. And so we went up to a village called it's La Muela, it's the Devil's Tooth, and it's because there's a mound in the background that kind of looks like a decayed tooth, so they call it Devil's Tooth. But it's a village of only about 70 people, I think. It's where the Fannings have had a ministry for several years, and so we went up there. We was going to do a Christmas meal and do a special Christmas service, and there was I got up and I preached about the gift of God, and we all like gifts for Christmas, and so I preached about the things that they were familiar with Christmas. And afterwards there was a little Aymara lady that she could understand the English or Spanish, but she couldn't really speak it very well. And so she come up to me, just touching her heart, and she's just looking at me. She was saying something I couldn't understand the native language that she was saying, but she went to another girl because she could tell I couldn't understand, and told that other girl in Aymara. She said that that she had accepted Christ in her heart as part of the service and stuff like that. And I guess it was really neat because here's this lady. I guarantee you she's probably 70 or 80, and she's lived up there. She's lived a rough life, and to think that with the broken Spanish that I had at the time and the things that I couldn't say because I had so little of the language, that the Lord was able to use us to reach somebody even up there that's been lost for so many years, that's never had the gospel for so many years, but came and was able to understand and understand the gospel and accept Christ. And there's a lot of people that talk. I believe that she probably came for the food. We'd gone the week before to say that we was going to have a special Christmas meal, Christmas service, and stuff like that. There's a lot of people that condemn that, and I know I heard a man a long time ago said, if you get them in with a hamburger, you got to keep them with a hot dog. Well, I'm not necessarily trying to give gifts to try and get people to come to church, but if that meal is what it took to get her to hear the gospel, it was worth it. Just to be able to go up there and give her the gospel and give all the others that happen to be there the gospel.
Is that something that's pretty rampant up there, is hunger and food? Is it a lot of poverty and stuff like that? There's
a lot of poverty. They somehow or another find ways to make ends meet. Part of the problem with where we're at is there's not much that grows because we're at such a high altitude. And so about the only thing they can grow is potatoes. But somehow or another they always find a way to make ends meet. But yeah, there's a lot of hunger and stuff. We took some Christmas baskets up there that just had a little bit of food, trying to give them a decent Christmas meal, and it really seemed to make a difference to those people.
Well, what do they do if they're not farming? Are they mining? What is their main?
On the Altiplano, yeah, the biggest part of what they do is mine. They've got odds and ends that they do in other places. Just like anywhere, you've got some people that have different professions, but the main profession would be, I would say, probably mining.
Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. Oh, first, spell the name of that town.
The Oruro.
Oruro, yeah. Can you spell
it's Oururo.
And then the other place you were talking about trying to get into?
Cochabamba.
Yeah.
Cochabamba.
Okay, and then the name of the plateau?
Altiplano.
Yeah.
Altiplano.
That way I can go into
Yep.
the stock footage and try to find some
Right.
pictures and stuff of this and video. So let's talk about you. Let's talk about how you came to know the Lord. Let's talk about your testimony.
Well, for me, it was a lot of a result of my grandmother. My mom and dad for the first few years, they were in and out of church and stuff like that. They had gotten in church good, and were real faithful. But at my grandmother's, she went to a little church just down the road, and they had a couple that my grandmother lived in a trailer park, and so there's a lot of children in the trailer park, and so my grandmother on, I believe it was Thursdays, would have a little, just I guess, Bible study, children's thing for the children of the community. They'd have a little snack and juice and stuff like that, and that couple would get up and give us some kind of lesson out of the Bible and stuff like that. And I assume it was sometime around Easter, because it was April. I don't remember exactly how Easter fell that year, but I remember it was one of those old felt boards that everybody used to stick the little pictures on and stuff like that. And they were teaching about the empty tomb, and they were teaching about the fact that Christ had died and had risen. And I specifically remember that empty tomb, and how Christ had risen. It wasn't just as the other gods. Of course, at the time I didn't fully understand, but it wasn't as other gods that they've died and that was it. But how he was able to rise again, and I didn't get saved as during the service thing that they were having, the meeting that they were having. But later on that night, as I was laying there on my grandmother's, she had a couch that folded out as a bed, and as I laid there, I thought about it and just asked the Lord to take control.
How old were you?
I was 9 years old.
9 years. Okay.
9 years old.
And it was your grandmother's influence that
Yeah.
really made the difference.
Yeah.
And so, what happened between 9 and, say, teenager? Did you stay with it? I mean, a lot of guys, they say, well, my teenage years, I kind of fell off the wagon there.
Yeah, I did. There at the end of the teenage years. Through my school years, I wasn't necessarily faithful. I wasn't necessarily. There was a lot of things that I needed to learn and stuff. I surrendered to preach when I was 15. But again.
Well, wait a minute. Surrender at 15?
Yeah.
Well, tell me about that a little bit. There's got to be a moment there where you're like, 15 years old. Nobody knows what they want to do when they're 15.
I didn't either. It's just.
Well, tell me about that.
Well, it's just. I really don't fully understand it, to be completely honest with you. That's what I felt God wanted. I'll be honest with you, I wasn't necessarily where I was supposed to be. I wasn't, like a lot of young people, I just, was kind of doing some of my own thing. But, of course, my mom and dad, they took me to church faithfully, and I did learn stuff, but there just come this point where I thought, well, this is what God wants. And so.
Well, was there somebody that influenced you? Was there one of your pastors or whatever that was like, you're really good speaking or whatever. Maybe you should think about this.
It was just kind of a weird thing. It was just, I knew that's what God wanted. And
just sitting in a church pew saying, you know what? I think I'm going to be a preacher.
Somewhat. It actually at the church, I was distracted. I knew that's what God wanted. I've never been one that really, some people have the story where they ran from God's will, and when God, was convicting them and stuff like that they ran from God's will. I've never really been one to do that. There's been times that I've waited, just trying to make sure that was the Lord's will, but I've never really run. But that night I remember I was distracted. I remember I was sitting somewhere close to the back, and there was people around me that were talking and stuff like that, and I got distracted, and I guess I didn't do what I was supposed to at the time. But later on that week, I got serious about it, and I started studying, trying to figure out what the Lord wanted, and it was just evident. There wasn't some specific something that He did or showed. It was that's just the way it was.
Wow. So after you surrendered to preach at 15, all right, take me on up to where you got here to the Bible college.
Well, for years after I surrendered to preach, of course, I came to Anchor for Bible college when I was 19 or 20. It was the year I got married. We'd only been married for less than a month when I come. But in between the times that I surrendered to preach and come to Bible college, I knew there was something with missions that the Lord wanted. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know where it was or how to do it. I just knew there was something that God wanted me to do with missions. And I remember as missionaries would come to our church, I still remember the first time Brother Fanning come to our church as they were on deputation. But as a missionary would come, I'd think, ooh, that's where God wants me. That's where God wants me. Another missionary would come and I'd say, oh, maybe that's where God wants me. And I surrendered to so many different places, it wasn't even funny. But I knew I know now I know that at the time I wasn't ready. And it's kind of like I was preaching the other day about just being a novice, and that's what I was. There was a lot of things that I needed to learn, and then the Lord put at the time, obviously she wasn't my wife, but put Jessica in my life, and she at the time wasn't saved. She was religious. There was she believed a lot of the things that were right, but there were some things that were a little different, and we started going to church. And at the time, I still went to church with my mom and dad, and we felt like the Lord. We had decided to get married. We'd gotten engaged. We just felt like the Lord had somewhere different for us. And so, one Sunday we said we'll find that church. That Sunday we came to Anchor, and it's the only place we've ever been. And the Lord through that allowed me to lead her to the Lord. Like I said, at the time she wasn't saved, and allowed me to lead her to the Lord. And shortly after we got married, and I started Bible college.
So what was it? I mean, you surrendered to preach at 15, but there's a big difference in, saying, okay, I'm going to do a Baptist church here in the States, and then becoming a missionary. Was there a moment somewhere in there that you knew that you were going overseas?
I always had the interest. There wasn't some specific thing it's kind of like with the preaching. There wasn't some specific thing that the Lord did or showed or whatever. It was just always an interest. When a missionary would come and they, to hear them talk about the language that they spoke wherever it was they're at, and the culture and the people and the food and the different things that they had done, and see the pictures of different people. It was always a strong interest of mine. As a younger person, I think the Lord put us at Anchor because there was a lot of things that I needed to learn, not just about missions, but scripturally. And Anchor is where I did most of my learning. And so at the time up until we came here, it was more of an interest. And I think the Lord was just working it into my heart, working things into my mind of what could be, what what the need is. Because you look at Scripture and it says to go. And there's more of a special calling to stay than there is to go, and so it was just a thing that was just, I guess He worked over time as missionaries would come through and talk to us.
Well, it sounds like your story sounds like a lot of guys that I've interviewed. How did you become a firefighter? How did you become a police officer? And they're like, I was just born for it. Does that? I mean, you just always you were born to be a missionary. Is that accurate?
I don't know that it'd be. I guess the Lord knows ahead of time. I don't know necessarily to say it necessarily in those words, but I guess seeing it, when you look at it from hindsight, I guess maybe that could be correct. That because He's always worked slowly but surely. He's always worked the things into my life and into my heart.
Well, how did you end up in Bolivia?
Well, as I said, we came here when we when we got married, and I did Bible college, and I had always had an interest because the Fannings were out of Anchor, and some of the things that had happened with them, it really tweaked my interest. And because of my past experiences, it's kind of funny because one of the things I had promised myself, I said, because of where I had, surrendered to all these different mission fields, when the missionary had come through, one of the things that I had promised myself was that before I surrendered to one certain place, that I would try and visit more than one, so that it wasn't just emotions. Because there's been so many missionaries that under an emotion, they surrender to this place, they surrender to this field, and then they end up not making it. And I didn't want that to happen. And so, I went to a couple places here in the States that the Lord allowed me to do. But, of course, I'd never been overseas or anything like that. And so I asked, can I come visit? And in 2009, we went to visit the Fannings. And I'll be honest with you, when we left the airport and we was going across El Alto, coming down into La Paz, the capital city, both me and my wife have said, we thought, what have I done? Where am I at? But while I was there, the Lord started working things in my heart. And by the time we left, we was bawling. Didn't want to leave. And then in 2010, I took one of the Bible college students down. They was like me. They wanted to go on a mission trip, but they had never been anywhere, and so I think they were kind of nervous about going out, and so I took them down. And while I was there, Brother Stephen asked me about coming in on their next furlough and just taking over somewhat while they were on furlough. And so we prayed about it, and that's what the Lord had us do. And then later, we took a youth group down and did a youth meeting. But it was in 2011 that we finally went down. We lived there for 6 months, and that's when I really learned more of what it was like to be a missionary. Because when I had gone down times before, I relied on them and let them. They did everything. They went to the grocery store, and I helped with things, but they drove us around. They talked to the people for us and all this other stuff. And now here I am. I'm on my own, and so during that time, the Lord really worked a burden in our hearts for those people, and that area. And it was on that trip that we first went across the Altiplano, and I saw the villages. The hundreds or thousands of villages that's across there that don't have anything. And when we come back, it took a little time. We trying to get it back adjusted to the States and things like that. But that's the Lord showed us that's what He wanted from us.
Very good. And the only other thing I want to really touch on is you said something about airplanes.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that.
Well, the Anchor has an aviation ministry, Wings with Word, and I remember when that ministry first come up under Anchor, that night on our way to church, I told Jessica, I said, I think I'd like to learn how to fly. I said, I don't know why. I said, but I believe it'd be the Lord's will. And it was so fascinating because that night, Pastor brought it before the church about bringing the aviation ministry up under Anchor. And so I went up and I visited Brother Bell, and he gave me my first hour of flying and stuff like that. And so slowly but surely I was able to get my pilot's license. But for a long time I wasn't able to do much flying. And I started questioning, well, what's the deal with this? The Lord helped me get my pilot's license, and then I'm not able to do anything. But then He showed me when we started looking at Bolivia, that there was a need to be able to reach some of these other villages, because it takes hours to get to a lot of these villages, and to be able to try and reach them. And then you've got hours trying to get back, and you can't travel like that and try and get a ministry started or stuff like that. And so it's just one of those things of trying to redeem the time. Paul talked about redeeming the time, for the days were evil. And so it's more of a thing of trying to redeem the time and trying to get to some of these villages that there's nothing. They have no gospel at all. And to be able to give them, at least try and give them the gospel.
Well, definitely. I mean, with all this stuff that you're already printing out and all these tracts and stuff that you're printing out, you don't necessarily have to have a church in each and one of these villages, but to be able to get there
Right.
and put out this material, kind of describe that a little bit.
Well-
How would the plane increase the number of people that you reach?
Well, it would increase because it would allow me to go places that ordinarily I can't. But as was mentioned, it would allow me to get material in there and get Bibles and stuff in there. But it'll also, because my goal is to get one of the nationals with a burden for that area and help them to get into that area. And so my thought is to be able to get in and get them started, because they love free stuff. It don't matter what it is, they love free stuff. And so to be able to give them a Bible and be able to give them the gospel, it would open up a door and be able to allow us to at least get started and to get in. My wife and I actually took a few little medical classes and things like that to be able to try and help some of the people if that come up, just as an open door. Just anything to try and get started in those places, because they are so closed. And so when you bring in Bibles, when you bring in free stuff, whether no matter what it is, they're a lot more accepted to it. Not always, but most of the time they'll allow you to come in. And if I can get somebody else to keep going in with me and allow them to get the same burden that we've got for these villages, and allow them to train up and to help me reach the same village.
Wow. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wanted to talk about? Did I cover all the bases with your ministry, with the points that you want to get across when people watch this video?
I guess so. I guess the only thing that I don't know that it would have to be added or anything, but is where we had our first child down there. And one of the things that has done is they are so proud that our daughter is a Bolivian. I mean, yes, she is a U.S. citizen, but it has been fascinating to watch the locals, because so many people so many times a missionary wants to leave, and I have no problem with that. Sometimes it's safer, sometimes it's better for the missionary to leave their field and come back to the States or go to a place where it is there's better technology and stuff like that. But it has fascinated the people that we had our daughter, because when we got there, the doctors, the embassy, everybody said you need to leave, because as a foreigner at 12,000 feet, given having a child, they said either she won't make it or she'll have problems, and for us to have stayed, we just felt we never got peace about it, and for us to have stayed, we didn't realize it at the time, but it has made a large difference to those people. They are so proud of the fact that she's Bolivian.
She's kind of broken down some of the barriers you
Yeah.
were talking about earlier.
Yeah, it has broken down some of the barriers.
Tell me about that a little bit. I mean, do they? What exactly? Why are they proud? Why is it because they feel like you care enough that you are going to risk that for them? I mean, how does it connect with them?
Well, for those that are saved down there, I think it, and I don't want to, I don't necessarily feel comfortable saying it this way, but
Sure.
It showed them somebody that had faith enough that the Lord would take care of things. And just because, we were willing to, we just trusted the Lord, and we knew that's what the Lord had for us and what He wanted from us. But for those that are not, that are not in the churches and stuff like that, it is a barrier breaker. It just, especially as we've been trying to do paperwork and stuff like that, they're just fascinated, and they start asking, well, what are you here for? And why is it that you were here when she was born? And so it gives us an opportunity to start talking about what we're doing. We're missionaries, and we're coming to plant churches. Well, what kind of church? And so we'll talk about Baptist and start talking about sometimes what we believe and the difference of what we believe maybe compared to some of the others and things like that.
So she's a missionary already.
Yeah.
Your baby is already a missionary.
I read a sign the other day when we was at the pediatrician. It said something to the extent that your greatest accomplishment for the kingdom of God may not be what you do, but who you raise.
Wow.
I thought that was fascinating.
Very much. Very good. I'm good. I think I got plenty. That's a great story. Yeah, we'll definitely include your baby. So I'll definitely need some pictures of, you know, I don't know if you had some like in the hospital in Bolivia, probably because I know that they don't have very good medical care over there. I've already
Yeah.
researched some of that, and well, that's another thing. One of the things in Bolivia I know is that there is a very high infant mortality rate. In fact, I was told that sometimes they don't even name the babies
They did.
until they
Yeah.
get to be 1 year old. So
Yeah.
this was a huge, to have your baby here was a huge leap of
Yeah.
faith. Tell me
When
about that.
well when Elizabeth was born, they never put her name on her birth certificate. They never even asked us for a name, because generally after a month to a year is when they've decided that the baby will make it and survive, and so it was our choice to go to the government and say, hey, you know, here's the name we want for our daughter, just because that's the life there. You know, that's the way things are, and I don't know necessarily that there's a whole lot more to say.
But I mean, that's got to be a big example to the Bolivian people that you are willing to stay here, that you have a vested interest in this country to be able to have your child here. And that's got to be, for them, it's got to be, wow, you know.
Well, I think to them it's interesting because they are so much against America. You know, they have a leader that is somewhat of a communist type leader, and he can't stand America, and so he's been pushing, you know, against America. He's kicked out the ambassador, he's kicked out a lot of the people at the embassy and stuff like that, and so that's what they've been taught. And so for somebody to come in that they've been taught as wicked, that they've been taught as bad and stuff like that, and to become one of them, I think has made a difference, because, you know, they look at America because America has the money. America's, you know, they live this great lifestyle. America thinks they're better than us, and I guess for us to come in and just be one of them, and it's not necessarily that we've tried changing our lifestyle, tried changing who we are. It's just, you know, we know that's where God has our home, and so we just went to live. And I guess to them it made a difference that, you know, we didn't mind living with them and around them.
Very good. I think that's all. I think that's it. You comfortable? You
Sure.
got everything you said you wanted to get said?